I'm Spencer Mazyck, and joining me now is lawyer turned author, blogger, and Huffington Post contributor Aidan Donnelley Rowley. She is the author of Life After Yes, and she writes about her life as a mother and writer on her blog called League Insecurities. Welcome, Aidan. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So first, let's begin with a little background, shall we?
Sure.
You went to Yale for undergrad, and you graduated from Columbia Law School in 2003. What did you do immediately following graduation?
Immediately following graduation from law school, I worked as an associate in a big law firm here in Manhattan, like many of my classmates, and just kind of immersed myself in that world and experience. And, it took me a little while to realize that it was probably not where I'd be in the long haul, but I found myself enjoying it and learning quite a bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, you were at Willkie, weren't you?
I was.
So you enjoyed your experience there, the law firm life.
I did.
So when did you decide to leave law to pursue a career in writing full time?
I think that I knew all along, probably even in law school, that I wouldn't be a practicing lawyer for the long term. But while I was there in my first year or so, I really never thought about leaving. I just kind of immersed myself in the experience and worked hard and got to know my colleagues and superiors. And
you never thought about leaving the practice?
I didn't think about leaving the practice, interestingly enough, until the Friday before the Monday I gave notice. What's interesting is I'd been there for about a year and a half, at which point I got married. Went on my honeymoon, never once talked about quitting my job, came home, spent about a week at the firm just doing my, working on my cases. And it was a Friday afternoon, and I was sitting in my office pouring through a large stack of corporate documents, doing some kind of document review. And I looked out the window at New York City, which is my city where I was born and raised. And it just occurred to me that this wasn't what I wanted to do.
Did you have any idea of what you wanted to do?
I had been thinking about writing. I found myself in moments at the law firm and at home just kind of taking out a piece of paper, opening the computer, and just writing little bits, fictional, non-fictional.
I was going to say,
writing
not
little
brief
stories.
writing that lawyers sometimes do.
I think, quite frankly, looking back, there was something about the practice of law that stirred in me kind of a hankering to be more creative.
Oh, so the longing for the creativity didn't come before you went to law school. It was after that.
I always loved to write. I always loved to write. In college and in law school, I found myself opting for courses where there was a writing requirement instead of an exam. I welcomed any opportunity to write, and I really enjoyed writing. But I never thought specifically about creative writing. I mean, I remember looking back, writing my college essay and loving that, which was very much personal essay, creative. My mother tells me I used to scribble little stories in the backseat of our station wagon. Clearly it was there, but I wasn't consciously aware of it. And it was, about a year and a half into the practice of law when I found myself truly intrigued by the people around me and their stories rather than the actual practice of law that I got the idea. I said, I want to write a book, which I had no idea how to do.
Well, and so would you describe it as a whim, though? I mean, did you give it serious consideration after you thought about it? You only had a couple of days.
Yes. I was young, and I had some foolish confidence in me, thankfully. I often say that if I waited it out a couple more years, I'm not sure I would have had the guts.
Okay.
I don't think it was a whim. I think it was a desire that was very much in me. I remember writing my departure memo at Willkie, and it was a very important thing for me to write because I was not only explaining to my colleagues why I was leaving, but I was kind of explaining to myself. And I remember using the words, I'm leaving to chase a dream. And for me, it felt like a dream.
Well, and so foolish confidence, would you say that that is what distinguishes you from other attorneys out there who are also interested in becoming full-time writers, but they just haven't been able to make that leap?
I don't know what it was. I had the freedom to be able to leave my job. I wasn't paying back loans, which is something I feel very compelled to mention because I know that that's not the reality for most young lawyers.
Financial considerations absolutely
so
keep
that
people there.
gave me some freedom. But I just had this sense that there were things in the world I was passionate about, and that the law I was doing at the moment was not one of them, and that writing was something that made me very excited, and whether or not I was going to succeed at it or not doing it was going to make me happier than I was at the time. And I just kind of decided to go for it.
Well, let's talk about your first book, Life After Yes. What's it all about?
My first book, Life After Yes, comes across, I know, as quite autobiographical. It's about a young attorney in Manhattan right after 9/11.
Sounds like you,
It
young
sounds like
attorney in
me.
Manhattan.
And the way I describe it is that a lot of the more superficial aspects of the book, the setting, the law firm life, the New York City, the Upper West Side, are very autobiographical. That's my world. Those are experiences I've had. But really the story is fiction, and it's about a young woman who faces a tremendous loss, the loss of her father in the 9/11 attacks, and within a short amount of time becomes engaged to be married to her boyfriend. And the book tracks the year between her engagement and her maybe wedding. And the book is really about all the doubts and fears and questions all of us have, really, about love, about career, about place, about the world. And so in many respects, it was very much pinned to a particular time in the city, but I think on some level it's very timeless. It's about those questions some of us are too afraid to ask.
Well, and they always say, write about what you know.
Right.
And so, I mean, aside from being a young attorney in Manhattan, are there any other similarities between you and the main character, Quinn?
The one storyline, which is very pivotal to the book, is the loss of her father. The book is not about the loss of her father. The book takes place in the aftermath. Something that is very eerie to me, even now, is that I set out to write this book several years before my own father was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Oh, wow.
And when he did get diagnosed with cancer, my instinct was almost to put the book away. I felt almost embarrassed and ashamed and guilty for having written this entire novel exploring the concept of losing one's parent.
Why was there guilt, though?
I just, it almost felt like what I had written was coming true or something. But when I really thought about it, I thought about, no, I'm tapping into something universal here, and something about adulthood, which is when we are out there in the real world and we're kind of making our way and we're stumbling along, one of the things we all deal with and think about is loss.
Yes.
And what might happen.
And how do you deal with it?
How do we deal with it? And particularly after 9/11, which is something that did not impact me directly, thankfully, but very much impacted me as a New Yorker and as a person. I found myself thinking about loss a lot more. And so rather than having me shove that book in the drawer of my desk, my dad getting sick prompted me to take it out and to polish it and to write query letters and to find myself an agent. And, I found an agent 2 weeks after his memorial service.
Did he get a chance to actually read the book?
He did. I gave him a copy of the book in a kind of a rougher form over Easter weekend, which turned out to be a weekend where he really took a turn for the worse, when we kind of knew the end was coming. And in retrospect, it kind of gives me chills to realize that's when I gave it to him. And it wasn't finished, but I realized I didn't have necessarily a lot of time. And he read it on his own time, which was tremendous, meant a lot to me because my father was a philosopher and a thinker, and the things he read were not novels like the one I had written. But he read it.
What did he think of it?
He liked it. He liked it. It wasn't his type of book, but he liked it, and he, I think, respected tremendously that I had written it and that I was following my passion. A meaningful footnote is that he passed away while he was working on a book. And so I think, again, all of this just really lit a fire under me. I say the first thing I published was the death announcement in the Times for my dad.
Wow.
And then I just, life is short,
Well, and so you said you got an agent 2 weeks, I think, after his memorial service.
Yes, I signed with my agent.
So how difficult was that? I mean, or what advice could you give to other folks who are also looking for an agent?
I've had opportunity to talk to a lot of writers about this very question, and there's really no magic formula other than just, following any lead, however tiny, telling everyone that you've written a book that you're very proud of and that you'd like to find representation. You'd be amazed at how many people have connections, however tenuous, to the publishing industry, to write letters and send them blindly. Now that I have a wonderful agent, I know that people are found in the quote unquote slush pile. It takes time and it takes rejection, and you've got to have a thick skin about it. But you just got to put yourself out there, and you've got to send letters, and there's no science to it.
Well, switching gears for just a bit, Aidan, your blog, Ivy League Insecurities, what's behind that name?
I started my blog at the behest of my agent, just as a way to get my voice out there prior to the publication of my book. And I really didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what this was going to be about, whether it was just going to be about writing or publishing or life. And for about a week, I thought about it, and I realized that what I was truly interested in doing on the blog was exploring the kind of uncertainties and insecurities we all feel in life, but are often kind of encouraged to gloss over.
So not just exposing your own insecurities.
Right.
Okay.
Right. The idea that insecurities can be inspirations, and that, here I was in many ways on kind of an academic autopilot, going from college to law school. And this was the first real risk I took, writing a book. And I had a lot of fear about it and a lot of insecurity about it. I was, when I started my blog, I had 2 little kids at home, and I felt like I had no idea what I was doing. I continue to feel that way. And I just thought to myself, here I am, I have this wonderful education, of which I'm incredibly proud, and I'm unprepared.
Do you look at it as sort of an oxymoron in a way?
Yes, I do. I think that all of us, whatever our schooling, are unprepared in many regards for the most important things in life. And what's been fascinating to me is I think often people who go to the best schools are less prepared on some level because, perhaps our heads are in the clouds, or we're, studying these more, lofty theoretical things. And then when it comes to the practical day-to-day of relationships and family and finding things we love to do, I think that often we are, worse off on some regard. Obviously, in the long term, not necessarily so. But I wanted to explore the idea that we don't need to wear the mask, that we can be vulnerable, that we can explore insecurities.
Well, you certainly do that on the blog. You write
do.
about everything from having a miscarriage to even abstaining from wine for a year, which I bet must have been fun.
Yes.
So is there anything that's off limits?
Oh, sure. I think that a misconception, people read my blog and they think they know everything about me. And admittedly, I talk about a lot of things in my life. There are plenty of things that are completely off the table and will continue to be. I'm very, very careful about trying to tell stories that are really about me and not about others. A really big dilemma I'm having now is that my girls are getting a little bit older, and I think deeply often about how my words will impact them. And there are things that are off limits. As long as it's about me and it's vulnerable about me, I'm willing to go there, even though it does make me anxious, because I think tremendous good can come from telling our harder stories.
And I want to mention, too, that you do maintain the privacy of your daughters and your husband by dubbing them as husband and first, second, middle, and also
big, middle, and little girl.
Exactly. So the blog entries, though, have they been picked up by the Huffington Post?
Yes, they have. I think it was last spring. I was writing about some anxiety I had gone through in the wake of the birth of my 3rd daughter. And for whatever reason, that was very hard for me to come out and talk about. I think that, many of us are very perfectionist people. And, it was hard for me to admit that I was having a very hard time. And so I wrote a particularly vulnerable piece about, anxiety and, alcohol as well. And this piece ended up in a conversation, the Huffington Post asked to run it. And long story short, I have become kind of a regular contributor there, which has been an absolute pleasure. It's a wonderful audience to tap into, and it's, very exciting.
No, congratulations on that. So creative writing isn't exactly something that they teach us in law school.
No.
But is there anything from your law school experience, law firm experience, that you would say helps you today with your work?
I have zero regrets about law school, and I look back fondly on those years. I think that law school and practice at the law firm helped me in immeasurable ways. I think that learning how to talk to people, I think learning how to read people, I think that practicing law helped me hone my writing skills, not necessarily my creative writing skills, but helped me form an argument and be concise and make a point and be clear. And I think that, something about being there in that world really, really sparked something creative in me that I'm not sure would have happened in another setting. So I'm in retrospect, very grateful for my stint at the law firm.
Okay, Aidan, and I know that you're working on another book in our final moments. Can you give us a preview? Tell us what it's about.
I can. My next book is, it's about 3 women in their 30s who met at Yale and find themselves in New York City, 10 plus years after graduation. And each of them is unmarried and without a family. And each of them for a very different reason. And the book tracks them over the period of just 1 week, the Sunday before Thanksgiving to the Sunday after Thanksgiving. And various secrets are revealed. And it's a book about friendship and about, doubts, life, existential questions. But it's a true departure from the first book because it does involve some research. One character's a photographer, one's an ornithologist. It's been really, really fun.
Well, it sounds interesting. We can't wait to read it. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. For more information on this or other topics, subscribe to BloombergLaw.com. You can follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you for joining us. Bye, everybody.